Welcome everybody to the Planning Committee on the 7th of November. I'm Councillor Phil Murphy, Chair of the committee. Dale?
Good afternoon all. I'm Dale Rook. I'm the Vice Chair of the committee representing Chepstow Castle and Larkfield Ward.
Thank you, Dale. And Craig?
Good afternoon all, I'm Craig O'Connor, Head of Planning.
Good afternoon, Amy Longford, Development Management Area Manager.
Good afternoon, Andrew Jones, Development Management Area Manager.
Paige Mosley, Solicitor of the Planning Committee.
Anna Hawker, Training Solicitor.
Richard Williams, Democratic Services.
Thank you, everybody. Just go to the agenda now. Richard, do we have any apologies for absence? I understand Councillor Riley might be late.
Apologies, Chair. No other apologies, Chair, other than that.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest as and when if something crops up? We go to the accuracy of the minutes of the previous meeting. Is anybody prepared to? Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Maureen. We go to the applications then. We'll deal with them in the order that they're on the agenda this time, because we've got no public speaking. The first one is application DM 2021-01595, which is the change of use of part of the building at 56 Brecon Road. And Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a full application for the conversion of the lower two floors of a three-storey former barrack building located off Brecon Road in the town of Abergavenny. The top floor of the building is currently in use as a flat and, just to confirm, does not form part of this application. This development relates to the ground and first floor, which have been used as a place of worship, Kingdom Hall, as well as the external grounds around the Victorian building. So permission is sought to provide a total of 4 flats, 3 two-beds and 1 single bed. And this also includes the provision of a total of 9 parking spaces, 2 of which would be to serve visitors. External alterations to the building are limited. A single-storey rear extension, lean-to extension would be removed, and there would be a reinstatement of window openings on the rear. I'll come through those drawings now shortly. But vehicular access to the site would remain via the existing point, whilst there would be private amenity spaces proposed to serve each flat. The rear yard area of the building would also provide amenity space for the ground floor flats, having access to shared space. So just to go through the slides, and before that, just to confirm the reason the application is presented to committee today is that this is owing to the number of objections, as well as it is requested by the local member. So just to go through the plans and the photographs, particularly for the benefit of any members that weren't able to join us yesterday, this is that the second slide, Amy? Yeah, so that's the site there. You can see the vehicular access on the left-hand side of the screen, coming through the pillars there. Yep, thanks, Amy. And you can see that's the ground floor, where you can see flat 1 and flat 2, and the parking spaces are labelled there to the north of the screen, or top of the screen, and also to the right-hand side. Also worth noting, just below the car parking spaces is the private amenity area serving flats 1 and 2, sort of in the centre of the screen. Just to the left, sorry, Amy. There we go. Yeah, and then there's a shared space to the right of that, serving the upper floor just below, sorry, which would serve flats 3 and 4. So just moving on to the the next slide. So this is the existing and proposed rear elevation. You can see on the top drawing there's a very small little rendered lean-to extension. That is to go, and you can see on the drawing below that there would be window openings reinstated to serve the ground floor flats. Just turning to the next slide. So this is the proposed and existing front elevation. You can see there's no changes there. It's now a very light touch conversion of the building. These, just for reference, are the existing floor plans. I will just move through then onto the proposed floor plans, say flats 1 and 2 to the ground, and flats 3 and 4 at first floor level. So in terms of the building, you can see in the top left that's the front of the building that faces onto Bailey's, and the rear there you can see in the top right, particularly more useful in the bottom right, is the small little lean-to that will go to facilitate the introduction of those 2 window openings. This is the yard then to the sort of side and rear of the building that will provide the parking court for the properties. I say that's just to confirm that's a total of 9 parking spaces, 7 per bed, and then there's allowance for 2 visitor spaces as well. So in terms of the planning issues and the issues at hand, your officer's report provides a detailed commentary of each of the material planning considerations relevant to this development. So rather than repeat those, I'll just focus on some of the key issues. Certainly with regards to principle, in the context of our adopted local development plan, the site is located within the development boundary for the town of Abergavenny, and as such the conversion of the building to residential units is considered acceptable in principle. In respect of affordable housing, the development relates to the conversion of an existing building for less than 5 units. Therefore, the policy for requirement for affordable housing provision is not triggered. Having regard to the visual impact and placemaking, etc., the site is located within the Abergavenny Conservation Area. And it's probably worthwhile at this juncture noting that the original scheme did also propose 6 new build flats to the rear. However, following negotiations with the case officer, the new build element has now been removed entirely, and the resulting scheme that now forms part of our consideration is, as stated previously, a very light touch approach to the building that's considered to preserve the character and appearance of the Abergavenny Conservation Area. In respect of highways, it is noted that there has been public representations, including those from the Town Council, in respect of highway impact of the development. As I stated, the scheme has been reduced from 10 to 4 units, and therefore associated parking and vehicle movement demands have been reduced accordingly. The scheme complies with MCC parking standards, all of which would be provided on-site within the red line boundary. However, it is also must be noted that the site is within very short walking distance to the town centre and onward journeys via both bus and train. It is therefore introducing additional residential units into what is considered to be a sustainable location. The site is located in proximity, as stated earlier, to the A40 trunk road. However, Welsh Government trunk roads offer no objection to the amended scheme, citing the extant use of the development land and the impact of the proposal not being material. Similarly, no objection is offered by the Council's highways engineers. A condition requiring a construction traffic management plan is recommended based on the advice provided by our engineers. Therefore, whilst local representations have been considered in detail and in respect of those highways concerned, the development is considered to be sustainably located, given its central location within the town, and policy compliant with regards to the requirements of both policy MV1 and associated supplementary planning guidance. In respect of ecology, the application has been submitted with a scoping survey, and this has been considered by the Council's in-house ecologist. Additional information detailing ecological enhancements, providing 3 swift boxes on the eastern elevation of the building, have been provided. and there are now no objections offered to the proposal from the Council's ecologists. So in conclusion, having regard to the relevant planning policies and all other material planning considerations, the development is considered acceptable, subject to the details conditions set out in the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And we've got, as I say, we've got no members of the public wishing to speak. Councillor Wright, the ward member, isn't with us, is she? No, she's not. Can I remind everybody then that they put their hand up in the chat, and to keep your cameras on so that we can make sure that you're eligible to vote. We'll go to members then. So, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Chair. I know that there's been some local representations regarding the highway impact, but I think we have to look at this building for what it previously used to be used for, which was the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, I'm not a Jehovah's Witness myself. I'm not familiar with when they meet or how, but I would assume that they probably meet at a similar time, a little bit like school pickups and drop-offs. So you're likely to have a big volume of traffic or vehicles all at the same time. Now, with this development, that there's going to be parking and there's going to be people coming and going at different times of the day, therefore reducing that flow of traffic. So I think looking at what it was previously used for and now what is proposed to be used for, I think that will actually ease the traffic situations. I can't sort of see any issue with that. As said, there's no major external modifications to the Victorian building, so it will retain its character. When we were on site yesterday, it looked unlikely that it was going to impact any neighbouring residents. I would have liked to have seen some form of sustainable modification, such as solar panels, air source heat pumps, or rainwater harvesting. I know that there's no policy surrounding this, but I do hope that in future developers will take this on board and include them within their plans. And the one point I just wanted to pick up on, really, I couldn't see any cycle park on there. Now, it's highly possible that some of the residents who are likely to live here might work at the hospital or within Abergavenny town itself, and therefore they may wish to cycle to and from work. So I just wondered if there was any scope within the site to actually add a cycle park in, or if we could request that within our gift or not. Other than that, I'd be quite happy to see this one go forward for approval as per the officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Andrew, do you want to pick up on that or wait till the end?
I'll wait to the end. There's only a quick point to come back on, so if there's any other points, I'll come back in one go, if that's okay. Okay,
that's fine. Councillor Prin.
Hi, thanks. I agree with a lot of Councillor McKenna's point in that there isn't a lot of issue with this development. My only concern was arriving as I did by foot and leaving as I did by foot. There is no pedestrian access to this site. With the cars parked on the left-hand side on the road going up to it, you had to literally walk down the centre of what is quite a busy road going via the petrol station. And when I walked past later on, there was actually a HGV walking up that road, driving up that road, reversing up that road, sorry, with another HGV on the road and two people trying to walk up it. I really think that this development would benefit from bollarded pavement on the left-hand side, and there did seem to be plenty of space for that as there were several cars parked along the wall. I really think that with all the developments already up there and people obviously trying to access them on foot and us trying to sell this as a sustainably easily development with easy walking distance of the hospital and town, that we really should be providing a pavement for access to the businesses and this development. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with what has been said. I think residents have really made the point that junction is a mess. You've got vehicles entering, exiting the garage, the Bailey's shop, the farm suppliers and the vets and pedestrians in amongst that. But I don't think this development is going to, in itself, make that much any more problematic than it already is. I think it is, it's a great pity that when the old railway yards were sold and being developed piecemeal, that there wasn't a placemaking approach taken. But I think that's, this development is generally to be welcomed. It provides the smaller kind of accommodation which is very much needed in Abergavenny.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just to bring back on something that Councillor McKenna said about cycles. Unfortunately, in this day and age, I don't think to have a cycle place outside there that people would lose it, because overnight and things like cycles are stolen all the time from different places, and I think most people I know who use a bike, my granddaughter's in the middle of London, she takes hers in, even though she's got to get it into the hallway of the house. People don't want to leave their cycles out where anybody can pick them up. So I don't know whether I'm wrong, but I think that might be the reason why they wouldn't have one. Thank you.
Okay, that's certainly a point. Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. On the existing site plan, it's clearly indicated that there's the trees planted around the edge, and particularly next to that fence where we visited yesterday, between the fence and the industrial complex behind. And we spoke about what growth there was there, green growth there was there. The plan suggests that there are trees all the way along there. They've obviously gone since the plan was made. So I'm just wondering whether there could be a condition on effectively replanting that with trees. It would hugely improve the appearance and give quite a nice screen between the housing and that industrial complex. I'll concur with other remarks to be made. As a regular user of that garage and Bailey's just behind it, the snarl up of traffic is absolutely outrageous, not helped by the very good value petrol prices in the garage there. But I don't think that the addition of this amount of accommodation is going to make a material difference to that. So I would support this, but I would like to see a condition about planting.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. Councillor Howells.
Yeah, thank you. Mine's a similar comment, really, with regards to the access point there. We did notice that it's a busy industrial and retail area, which, of course, will have no control over the volume of traffic moving along there. But I just wondered whether there was any data available to say how much, for extra flats, how much more traffic that would generate into the area in comparison to what was previously there. Would it be similar or less or more? Thank you.
I would have thought it's negligible given the other activities there. Councillor Bonfield.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andrew, for your presentation. I do agree with everything that other members have said, and I would agree that this application should be granted following the officer's recommendations. I would just like to pick up on a point that Councillor Bryn made about a pavement. I regularly use the garage, Bailey's and the farm shop, and parking is a nightmare along the one side of that road, which are right by the properties and the vet. So is that within our gift, or would that have to be taken up with highways as a separate matter? But I would just lend my support to Councillor Bryn's suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, I've got nobody else put their hands up. So Andrew, do you want to go through those points?
Yes, thank you, members. Lots of really good points there. I'll take them in reverse order. In terms of provision of pavements and issues, I think that's really going beyond the scope of what's needed to make this development acceptable. There's obviously is a lot of industrial commercial uses on the land outside of this site, with some highway issues in terms of parking and movement. But we need to look at what's required to make this development in isolation acceptable, and any sort of traffic calming or pavements, bollards, whatever it might be, to solve existing problems outside of this site, wouldn't be reasonable for this application to try and mitigate or manage. So, in terms then working backwards to Councillor Howell's point, in terms of the data, no, there isn't a transport assessment hasn't been provided. However, I mean, what we need to do, what one must do, is balance this against the sort of extant land use, which is a D1 use. So that's, whilst it's to date been used as a place of worship, that also does include things like public halls, training centres, creches, clinics, health centres. So all those would be lawful uses of that building. So having regard to that potential land use within that lawful use versus the provision of 4 flats, 7 beds, I think that's probably where our highways colleagues and Welsh Government highways have said the impact is non-material. So hopefully that satisfies that point. Councillor McConnell's point about planting, I think that's sensible. Yeah, there looks to have been trees along that southern boundary at one point that obviously not in their entirety there now. So it would be on that basis, within members' gift, is 2 conditions. One, for a soft landscaping scheme to be submitted and agreed, and then a second condition to implement that accordingly. So, yep, that's very reasonable and proportionate to the scheme. In terms of the provision of cycle places, yeah, I mean, at the minute there aren't the sort of policy levers for us to sort of insist upon them. That's certainly something that the RLDP and its sort of emphasis on sustainability can look at. But I would just comment that there are, individual amenity spaces apported to the flats, so that there would be that potential for owners to secure outside bikes, etc. If they were minded to, use bikes, so that space is available. Just taking the queries back. Again, in terms of the pedestrian access that was raised. Obviously, what this application can only do is what's required to make it acceptable, and it can only provide what's within the red line boundary. And I think our view, and perhaps some of the members have shared that, is that the use proposed doesn't sort of warrant those external changes and measures to be put off-site that perhaps would have been secured on much larger schemes through Section 106 agreements. I mean, this is a fairly small use, and in terms of movements, must have regard to, say, that fallback lawful use of the lower 2 floors. So I think, yeah, just the initial points raised by Councillor McKenna, yeah, in terms of the solar provision and more some air source heat pumps, all these sort of things that are desirable, but at the minute the policy hasn't quite caught up, and that's certainly something that we will be working with as part of the RLDP. But at this stage, they're not there's no sort of trigger to require them, and certainly their absence wouldn't be a reason to withhold planning permission. So hopefully that I've covered all the members' points, but please let me know if I've missed any.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. We've had a proposal about the house, Councillor Powell. Yeah, I was just going to say about the condition. Can we just have, if everybody's happy with that, can you just put your thumbs up, those online, or your hand, whatever? Yeah, everybody in here? Okay, right, so we've had a recommendation for approval. Councillor McKenna proposed that, and Councillor Powell seconded. Can we have the voting function up, please, Richard? Who was? Councillor Bryn, are you still with us? You just dropped off the screen. No, it doesn't look as it. So, no. Councillor Bryn, sorry if you do come on. No, you missed the vote. Okay, can everybody vote no, please?
Okay, so that's approved. That's 13 for approval.
Okay, thank you, Paige.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as you said, this is an application that seeks to vary the Section 106 agreement that was signed in connection with planning permission DM 2013-00304, which was for the construction of a 38 retirement apartments at Swan Meadow, Abergavenny. Just to confirm, the reason that this particular application is presented to you today is that it is made by MCC Housing, and also the original decision with Associated 106 was made by Planning Committee. So just run through the slides. So some of the members on site will have been familiar with it and may be familiar with the site. In any event, it's been built now for a little while. So that's the site there. You can see it's to the rear of the bus station, opposite side of the road to Aldi as you come into the town centre. So these are some of the floor plans that were approved as part of the original scheme, and it's the unit there you can see in red that is the subject of this application to to modify the terms of the Section 106 agreement. So in terms of assessment, the original Section 106 agreement secured two of the units, two of the 38, to be golden share apartments where either an LD person or persons nominated by the council as being unable to meet their housing needs on the open market would be afforded the property. MCC's housing team have in recent times been attempting to sell the unit, but these attempts have been unsuccessful. And as such, permission is now sought to vary the Section 106 agreement that would see a financial contribution to be used for the provision of affordable housing elsewhere in the locality. And in terms of calculating this fee, the current market value of this unit is £235,000, so the 30% share would be £70,500. In terms of, so it's quite a sort of focused consideration, in terms of the consideration of the application, the Council's housing team have successfully done this on other sites, and officers are satisfied that the proposal accords with policy S4 of the adopted LDP, and that the sum would provide a much needed contribution to support the provision of affordable housing in the local area. And as such, it is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And we got Sally Merrick online in case anybody's got any particular points. Sally's the housing officer. Anybody got any points they want to raise on this one? No? Jane, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrew, for your presentation. Personally, I can't see that there's much to debate on this one. We went out on site yesterday. There wasn't much to see, although it's always great to go out on site to put the applications into context. MCC Housing have carried out the market appraisal to get the apartment occupied without success, of which I have no reason to believe that that appraisal wasn't thorough and accurate. As we all know, we've got a housing shortage within Monmouthshire. This apartment has been empty since it was built. let's get it back into the housing stock and occupied. And if members are in agreement, and noting I wouldn't want to stop anyone from having their say, I'd be minded to either move straight to a vote or just to keep this debate short. And I therefore agree with the officer's recommendation to approve the application and propose that it is agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Before I bring Councillor Easton in, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wish to clarify something. We did discuss the occupancy of this particular unit on site yesterday. We have since then sought to confirm that with Sally of the housing team. It has been occupied, so it hasn't been vacant since it's been built. So I just wanted to correct that. It hasn't been empty since built, but like I said, the issue now that's prompted this application is its most recent unsuccessful marketing attempt. So just as a point of clarity there. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Easton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a financial question. Originally, it was a golden share of 2 apartments, and now we're down to 1 with a current market value of 235,000 with a £70,000 potential share. Is there a potential loss overall from the 2 properties that would have been the golden share, based on the fact that the values were a lot less then to what they are now? Is there an equation to show whether we're losing money or sitting even or gaining money? Or should I go home?
Sally, can you answer that one?
Well, as a percentage of the current market value, I would say you wouldn't be losing it, because the property would have been bought initially back in, I think, 2017 at a 30% discount, and it's now being sold at a 30% discount. So we get the same share in terms of the market value.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Easton's happy with that. Thank you, Sally. Nobody else has put the... Councillor Bryn.
My apologies. I have thank you for the presentation, but I just have one query. I wonder if we could be informed at a later date what this money that they gain from the sale of this property is invested in locally, so that we know then that this is supplied a home for a young family, or just some kind of information as to what happens to this money they get as a result of the sale. Thank you.
Okay, Craig.
Yeah, excellent question, Councillor Bryn. Something that Sally is leading on in terms of looking at the affordable housing contributions and then putting them into other schemes. That's certainly something that we could do and report back on in the future, in terms of, you would have probably seen some schemes come through this planning committee. Maybe we don't highlight the fact of where they are being funded from. So maybe that's something that we could have and report back to you. But this is something that come out of the Performance Scrutiny Committee in terms of Section 106 contributions. Where does that money go? And it's something that we will be feeding back to all members on. So it's a work in progress, but particularly with regards to this pool of money, maybe that is something that we will feed back into the annual performance report, so it's quite clear and transparent in terms of where that money's gone. So that is a work in progress, Councillor Bryn.
Okay, thank you for that, Craig. I think that is a good idea. Nobody else has put their hand up, so we have a recommendation for approval. Richard, can you put the... we did have a proposal from Councillor McKenna. Can I have a seconder? Councillor McConnell. So the votes function is up now, so can everybody vote now, please? I would if my screen wasn't jumping around. Yeah, it's done it now.
Okay, so that's approved, 14 for approval.
Thank you, Paige. That's the end of the applications for today, but we do have some appeals decisions. So, Andrew, do you want to pick up on those?
Yep. Just to confirm, so these are just appeals received rather than appeal decisions. So it's just to sort of be aware of what's currently in with us and before PEDU for consideration. I'll just wait for the slide to catch up. Okay, yeah, so the first one is, some text missing there, apologies, is an appeal against the enforcement notice, which was works operational development that saw a ditch filled in Llanbarrack, so an enforcement notice was served. So that's an appeal that's live. The second appeal we've received is against our refusal to remove a condition attached to a previous planning consent in respect of lighting. So that's ongoing as well. And the final is against our decision to refuse planning permission for a single dwelling, and that's down at Hardwick Hill, Chepstow. So just to confirm, those aren't decisions from PEDU yet, those are just what's recently come in during the last quarter. So just for your information, thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. Next item on the agenda is the Planning Annual Performance Report, which Craig is going to run through.
Thank you, Chair. Amy, are you happy to share the screen as I go through? Is that okay? Yeah, brilliant. Good afternoon, members. This was just to run through with you the planning's annual performance report. This report went to performance scrutiny a couple of weeks ago now, and we just run through the figures. Very, very helpful discussion with members on that scrutiny committee about the performance of the planning department over the last year. So I just wanted to share it with planning committee. Councillor Bond did raise the fact that it hadn't come through this forum. It certainly was on the agenda to do so. Unfortunately, I couldn't get on the agenda last month, hence why it's on this one, and it's gone to scrutiny before. So I just wanted to run through some of the key figures. Really some positive news in this report. So hopefully planning committee members will endorse it and welcome some of the figures that we're going to share with you in a moment. So just to run through in terms of the format of the report, it's based on 5 key aspects, and that's plan making, efficiency, quality, engagement, and enforcement. They're the main key criteria within the report. Following last year's performance scrutiny committee, there was very much a lot of feedback about planning doesn't tell the narrative of the story. It's about data, and it was a lot more about the figures rather than what we are actually delivering in terms of outcomes. So the format of the report has changed slightly in the last 12 months based on that feedback from a scrutiny committee. So it is much more of a usable document now. Before it was over 60 pages and we've trimmed it right down to 30 pages. So hopefully it tells that story a bit better now moving forward. Amy, just go to the next slide. Unfortunately, as in previous years, it's a shame at the moment we're not getting the all Wales figures in terms of how all other development management services are being run across Wales. So we haven't had this since before COVID. So unfortunately, on an all Wales basis, we can't do a comparison. We've got the 2019 data, which shows the averages across Wales for each category, but unfortunately, we're still working with Welsh Government officers in terms of providing that wider framework, which is a shame because we would like to benchmark ourselves against other authorities, but we'll keep working with Welsh Government to get those figures out in due course. So how are we doing? This just is a bit of a slide really to show you. I wasn't planning to go through every single detail of the APR, but this is just sort of picking up those highlights for you in those key sort of areas. So the proportion of applications determined within agreed timescales. So on normal applications, we have about 8 weeks to deal with planning applications unless we agree an extension of time with the applicants and work with them. And a lot of the time that is working with them to get a positive outcome. As you can imagine, when you submit a planning application, you don't really want to get that checked back to you with a refusal in 2 or 3 weeks. Time isn't the fact that you want a positive outcome. So we try and work with customers as much as possible to get that positive outcome and time necessarily and agree the right time scale with them. So that's why that's our sort of mantra really in terms of how we try to move. So timescales have improved over that years. So compared to the year before, so rising from 81% to 89% agreed within the time period, and that remains well over Welsh Government's target of 80%. So again, we're 9% above that. So really, really good that the team is agreeing those timescales with customers and working within them. The average time to determine applications, however, has slightly increased. We're watching this metric quite closely because it has risen over the last number of years. I think there are a number of reasons why the average time processing applications increased. As you know, in the north of the county, over the last 2 years, we have the environmental constraints of phosphates. So water quality in our rivers is having an adverse impact on ecology, and we have to think about that on every planning application that we have to deal with in the north of the county. And the background, which members might not see, is we do a habitats regulations assessment, and we assess each planning application to the probability of the potential harm that it would have on the river. So that is adding more time, and other counties and other authorities don't have those issues with regards to water quality like we have in Monmouthshire. So we are watching that measure. We are now in a much better place than we were 2 years ago with regards to phosphates, so hopefully that will increase over the time, but certainly as a management team we're watching that, and we don't want that to increase any further. The proportion of major applications determined within agreed timescales was 71%, and again that was above the Welsh average. I'll run through another slide in a moment which shows you a traffic light system, so it might be a bit more visual for you as well. 75% of listed building applications were determined within approved timescales and provided valuable heritage service feedback. Percentage of applications approved, so this is really, really positive. 94% of applications are approved, and that's well above the Welsh Government average. Again, I think that's testament to the fact that we work with people to get the positive outcome. I know from speaking to colleagues, other authorities don't do that. Very much potentially happy to issue a refusal. I don't think that's the right thing to do things. I think I'd much rather be working with people to get the right outcomes. We've got 100% success rates on applications that went to decision stage and followed that pre-app service. So people who engage with us early before they even submit a planning application, we have 100% of those applications going through. Sometimes, obviously, in conversations with people before they even make an application, we'll give advice, they'll change their application, and that will give them that success rate then at the end. So again, I'm quite proud of that in terms of what the team have done there, in terms of working with people to get those right outcomes. Enforcement performance, this is improved, and this was a significant part of the conversation with the scrutiny committee. And following scrutiny committee, we actually went back and had a look at the regulations and how you manage enforcement, and it actually turned out, unfortunately, we were measuring one aspect incorrectly. So it's positive in terms of that measure has actually gone now from a red previously to an amber. So I'll run through those figures in you in a moment so we can show you that in a bit more detail, but it does show that in the last 12 months, the enforcement team have been doing a significant amount of work to get us out of that red area and into a more appropriate amber situation, and we're certainly within this year so far we're in a green situation. So really, really positive in terms of the work that's been done by Andrew Jones and the team in terms of getting those enforcement figures up. In terms of Section 106 contributions, we just discussed this as part of the previous application, and the Performance Scrutiny Committee did discuss Section 106 contributions and wanting a bit more transparency in terms of where those figures are going. I am doing a piece of work, and I will feed back to Scrutiny Committee members and Planning Committee members and any elected member really in terms of where that money has gone. We've done a bit of piece of work since 2014 over the lifetime of the LDP and the contributions that we have gathered, so that can be shared with members shortly. This slide is a tool that we use just to highlight the value of planning in Monmouthshire over the plan over this performance period, 22 to 23. It puts in a lot of work and different components in terms of residential development we've allowed, retail development we've allowed, commercial development we've allowed, and then just adds a bit of context in terms of the value that is doing to our county. So if we go to the next slide, Amy. On that bottom figure is what we wanted to focus on really, is that the total value of planning is 84.7 million in our area over that plan period. So that's just shows really in terms of the value of planning and the value of having a really robust planning policy framework that enables jobs and housing and all the other aspects in the right locations, and obviously sustainable development is certainly what we're looking to support. But planning committee members, that's certainly, you're having an influence there, making a decision on applications every month. That's the kind of the value and input that it does for Monmouthshire. So So these are the traffic light systems I was explaining to you about in terms of the figures. So each of the measures there's 12 measures that were measured on by Welsh Government, and out of those we've got 6 which are within the green category, 5 which were within the amber, and 1 which is within the red, which is relating to enforcement. So as you can see there, when we talk about percentage figures, we're not talking about significant amounts. So that top figure there, you can see the major applications, we're saying 71% of those applications are dealt with within agreed times. That is 5 out of 7 applications. We don't have a significant amount of major applications in Monmouthshire. In other authorities like Cardiff and Newport and other bigger urban authorities, they have a bigger amount of major applications. So, we are talking a smaller amount there. However, you can see that we're in that green, amber, we're above the Welsh average of 60%. As I said earlier, average time to deal with applications is slightly going up, and that is something that we're monitoring and watching over time. And I think this is something that we need to look on there in terms of how we manage that going forward. And that is that orange slide there, the 110 days. You can see last year it was 106. It's been creeping up for a number of years now, and we have to be careful that that doesn't go into the red category, which is 112 days. So we are very, very close to it. The team are looking at this, and I think we need to have a little think about how, particularly in regards to those applications to the north of the county, how we address that. I don't think there's anything else there that we need to pick up on in terms of highlighting. So these are the other green categories. So there's some other things in there in terms of, do we have a duty officer? We do offer a duty officer service to customers 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So that is an easy win in terms of being accessible to members of the public. We have an active website as well. People can go on and look at planning applications and comment. So really, really good positive news stories with regards to those aspects in terms of our customer service credentials. The stuff that we did need to focus in on is enforcement. This is a very, I think as members already know, in terms of some of the enforcement cases that they've had to deal with within their wards. It is a controversial area. It's a sensitive area in terms of dealing with things which are unauthorised, and we have to then take a risk-based analysis as to whether we take legal action against the people, the landowners, in terms of unauthorised development. And it can be quite a lengthy process in terms of the legal requirements to get to a court case as well. So there is some work that we have been doing there. That red figure there is the percentage of enforcement cases investigated and resolved within 84 days. So we were not hitting the target there of 70%. Which is something that we are certainly looking at now. So the figures I've just provided there on the right just show you the Q2 figures. So Andrew and his team have been looking at this quite significantly in terms of how they can improve. And as you can see there, the Q1 and the Q2 figures are improving significantly. So 82% and 77% is where we currently are. So if we keep on that trajectory, next year's annual performance review will certainly be within the amber to green. So just to show members that, that the enforcement team are working hard on this, and we are getting to a much better position. So key activity over, this is 21-22 there, but this is the work that we've been doing over the last sort of 22-23, sorry, so that year is wrong on the top, but we're carrying out a lot of work on the replacement local development plan, as members know from the last council meeting. Significant amount of work going into the development of that plan, and we're hoping to go out on consultation on the deposit plan next spring. Monitoring and evaluating development plan policies. So there's an annual monitoring report going to performance scrutiny at the end of this month. That'll outline how the planning policies within the existing LDP are working. As you can imagine, and as we have discussions with planning committees in this forum, some of our policies are out of date now, particularly with regards to climate change and the retrofitting of renewable energy. So that's certainly something that we will certainly are looking at as part of the replacement local development plan. And as members know, we as a council, we voted to change from net zero ready to net zero carbon moving forward. So a significant change in terms of our standard for new homes moving forward. Providing pre-application advice to customers. As I said, 100% success rates. If people engage with our officers at an early stage, they will get the positive outcomes they're seeking. We're securing detailed planning permissions for new major developments. There are some new major developments which I'm aware of, which will come through the process and come through this forum in the future. So that's quite exciting in terms of our tourism and our housing aspirations. And then the financial contributions we've already mentioned, over 4 million secured via strategic sites in the LDP. We've safeguarded a lot of listed buildings, so Amy Longford's team and the heritage team working really hard on all of those listed building applications. We have a high proportion of listed buildings in Monmouthshire, 2,400 listed buildings and 31 conservation areas. So we do have a dedicated team to look at that, and we have had some resourcing issues with regards to some recruitment challenges, I would suggest, in terms of that skill shortage, but we are now in a situation where we are at full capacity, a new member of the staff in the next coming weeks, which is quite exciting, which will be really positive as we move forward. Again, taking robust enforcement action. As you can see, members, the figures are improving, which is really positive. And then working with other agencies. So I've already mentioned the phosphates challenge that we have within our county. I've been particularly working with Natural Resources Wales, Dura Cymru Welsh Water, Welsh Government. I've attended the Phosphate Summit now, the last two, on an all-Wales basis, certainly looking for solutions and looking at the ways that we can tackle this significant environmental constraint that we have at the moment. And we do have now a strategic solution for Monmouth and for Abergavenny, which is positive and allows sustainable developments as we move forward, which will help businesses and enable us to meet our affordable housing targets. These are just some images, again, about telling the story in terms of what we do, so not just basing it on figures and that quantitative measure, but real outcomes for people. So these are some homes, some affordable housing schemes that we've allowed over the years. Tony, you would have seen this in terms of the Monmouthshire housing in your area. And then, so that's in the bottom left there, Muse Developments. And there's also, sorry, go back one, Amy, sorry. So in the top left there, that's a site in Devorden, so a rural affordable housing scheme, so 60% affordable housing on that site, so really high there. And then on the right, contemporary bungalow scheme, so there were some old garages on that site previously, and Monmouthshire Housing Association have provided these accessible bungalows for people, all 100% affordable housing, so some quite innovative schemes there, some different designs as well, I would suggest, which were quite challenging to get through in terms of some people's views on that modern design, contemporary design, but personally, I think they could look quite well and fit in well and provides efficient homes for people. Next slide is just to show the big scheme that we did have, which was the King Henry VIII School, which is a big scheme that we dealt with for a number of months, working with colleagues in the education department to get the right scheme appropriate to deliver those educational needs in the long term for future generations. So that's well underway now on site. Really got high sustainability credentials on that site as well, with significant amount of solar array on the roof. So these are just 4 actions that we've got going forward, moving forward now into the next plan period. So we're going to digitise a lot of the information in relation to the microfiche. So there's a lot of data and information on all planning applications, all held on microfiche, which isn't the most accessible to people. And we were going to look to digitise that piece of work. I'll be honest and frank in terms of the financial cost of doing that is over £30,000. At the moment, I am having to look at that in terms of the budgetary requirements as to whether that would be value for money. I know Councillor Howells mentioned that in the scrutiny committee, and that's something that I'm reviewing at the minute. So it might be something that we have to put on hold. It's a shame, because I do think it would be a piece of work that would help the public to access that information. But these are the challenges when weighing up budgetary responsibilities. Second action we're looking to do is to continue to review and make positive changes to the enforcement function. We have been doing a significant amount of work in this area. As you can see, members, the figures are already improving. I'm hoping that trajectory will continue, and next year when I report on the APR back to performance scrutiny, we'll be in that amber green, and if we carry on as we are already in the first 2 quarters, I'm sure we will be. Next slide, Amy. Amy Longford, heading up and leading on the heritage aspects, is leading on this piece of work to finalise the buildings at risk strategy. So this is looking at all of our heritage assets across Monmouthshire, traffic lighting them to see which sites, which buildings we should be looking at, and whether we should have mitigation strategies, and whether the council should be using its powers to come in and help support those listed buildings. We know that some members have a number of buildings that we're looking at and working with in key areas, key town centres, and I think members probably know some of those buildings that we need to focus on. So Amy is heading up that team and that piece of work, and we will report on that strategy as we move forward. And then the last action is for us as a service, really. There's a challenge in the planning sector of recruitment, particularly with regards to encouraging graduates and younger people to come into the profession. This is something that I'm working with my Planning Officer Society for Wales hat on, is how do we encourage people to come into the profession. It is controversial, and some of the feedback we've had from university graduates is that it's a challenging industry to get involved in, particularly with regards to social media now, and the negative actions around that. But I would argue that it's a very, very rewarding profession to be in terms of the type of developments that we create. And I think you can see, members, from the data that I've given you, that the value added to communities when we do get it right, when we do create right sustainable developments, it is very rewarding. So we've got to do a lot more work on that. In a Monmouthshire context, myself and the management team have introduced a number of trainee roles. So we've got a number of planning trainees now. So we've got one in the applications team, we've got one in the planning policy team, and I know they're finding it very beneficial in terms of that on the job experience and dealing with smaller applications, but hopefully we can help them grow through the process. And that's certainly something that I want to keep advocating for, to get younger people into the profession. So we'll keep doing that, ultimately, is what I'm trying to say there. And these are the figures then for quarter one, quarter two. I won't dwell on this too much, but I just wanted to share with you the good work that's been happening over the last 12 months in getting those figures to where they need to be, particularly with regards to enforcement. So you can see there, green across the board, really. So we are really trying to push ourselves to get into those higher performance figures as we move forward. With the orange being the one that I've mentioned to you, which is that average time to determine all applications. That's the one that I'm certainly watching at the moment, and one that we need to look at and think about how we take that forward. But I think that concludes, ultimately, just a bit of a feedback to you, planning committee members, in terms of how your planning service is doing and how your teams are working. I can assure you it is challenging, but I mean, as I've got the mic at the moment, I just wanted to thank my colleagues in the planning team for all the hard work they have done over 22-23. It is a challenging environment. It's a challenging part of the council to work within, and I think I just want to pass on my thanks to them personally, really, in terms of the work they do. I really want to thank them, Andrew Jones in terms of enforcement, and Amy Longford in terms of the heritage aspects. Really doing a great work, and hope it continues over the next 12 months. So that was just a feedback, members, in terms of that annual performance report. Happy to take any questions or queries on any of that.
Thank you, Craig, and I think we can all congratulate the team on this report. Yes, everybody online is doing this, so they're doing it in the chamber as well now. Yeah, brilliant, and good to see that red go to amber too. So yeah, absolutely excellent. We have got some members wishing to speak. So, Councillor Powell.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know where that hand came from. I tried to get rid of something on my screen, and next thing I saw, my hand was there, so I didn't actually put it up. But I want to add my thanks to all the members of the planning office, all the ones here and all the ones we don't see. There are a lot we don't see regularly, and we want to thank them all very much for all their work. And thank you for the presentation.
Councillor Easton.
Thank you again, Chair. It's my question, basically environmental. I'm surprised you didn't show Closgeddynant on your pictures as well. That was an environmental estate, the old Brookside. Oh, yeah. That's very good, that. It's to do with phosphates. This was raised in a meeting with NRW last week. John was there, I think. They seem positive working with authorities, but we've got Wales on one side, England on the other. There doesn't seem to be the same restrictions on the English side for phosphates as there are on this side. Would that deter, in your mind, developers developing properties on this side of the river, which probably cost a bit more than what they would on the other side of the river? Are you having problems of that coming up? And the second question isn't really about what you presented today, it's about the environment in the future. Wrexham Council yesterday turned down a battery storage facility close to Pylands because it was in the countryside, or close to the countryside. Are you having expressions of interest in Monmouthshire for this sort of facility for storage of power close to Pyland lines, which would be in the countryside? And what would be your feelings on that as well? Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. In relation to phosphates, yeah, it is challenging with regards to the River Wye. There is two sets of legislation butting up against each other in terms of England and Wales. So Wales, we do have separate legislation. Natural Resources Wales, the environmental regulator, and we work within their planning guidance on this side of the border. England work with Natural England with regards to their legislation. But we are working collaboratively, and we sit on Monmouthshire County Council, myself and Councillor Catherine Maybe, sit on the Wye Nutrient Management Board. Yeah. So there is joint collaborative work in there on that aspect. So we do talk through projects, talk through legislation, but when it comes to a planning decision, we certainly are working within Wales's legislation. The Wye Nutrient Management Board is where we have that collaborative space to speak about how we manage nutrients across the river as it goes through the two countries, and then that's how we operate that. But in terms of the planning legislation, we work within Welsh legislation, which is slightly different from the English. I haven't heard any sort of developers being deterred either way in terms of which way they would go across the border. I think ultimately if they want to locate in Monmouth, they'll locate in Monmouth, and if they want to locate in England, they'll locate in England. But I guess we are doing what we can to work with our neighbouring authorities who sit on that nutrient management board, and Forest of Dean do, and Gloucestershire do. So there is that combined sort of overview scrutiny, and the public sit on that nutrient management board as well. So there's a number of environmental groups who also sit on that nutrient management board. So hopefully that gives us that overarching network to address it. But there is still a lot of work to do in this area. I can see this issue is going to continue in the long term, really, until we get our rivers back to an appropriate level in terms of phosphates. So that's more of a long-term strategy. But as I keep saying, I said it many times, the good news is that we are getting to a place now where we are able to manage it, and we are able to allow development. A number 18 months ago, I think I was feeling quite negative about the future because it was very much about computer says no, but now we're much more getting to a place of these are the strategic solutions. We can take sustainable development forward, and it is about evidencing that we aren't going to harm the river in the long term. And as long as the development can do that, then there's no reason why it can't go ahead, which is why you've seen a change recently, particularly with regards to the Raglan application. That application for 40 houses, that was on hold for a number of years because we couldn't evidence it, and then we got to a situation where we did when we got the permit through. So that was really, really positive, and hope long may that continue, because we need to provide affordable housing for our communities and enable job creation as well. So it holds up all those aspects. In terms of your second question, which was with
battery storage.
Oh, the battery storage in Wrexham. Yeah. I don't want to comment on Wrexham in terms of the decision making. Obviously, that is a matter for them to determine in terms of their local plan for us. I can say that we haven't had any significant energy applications recently. There was one a number of years ago in Sudbrook for small power units for holding electricity in emergency if the grid was to go off, which I dealt with actually, ironically. But Welsh Government approved that eventually. But recently, Council Eason, we haven't had anything, so there's nothing to report really, unless Andrew and Amy know of anything, which I don't. But no, I don't think there's been anything. But I think in terms of us, how would we view that going forward? We would look at the LDP. I wouldn't want it to be located necessarily in the open countryside. I think that probably might be negative. But we would work with consultees in terms of impact on housing, on traffic, as you would do with any other planning application. So it'd be case by case on its merits ultimately.
Thanks for that, Craig. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to also echo thanks to the team and Craig for the presentation, and to everybody. It's a lot of hard work behind this report, I can see. I just wanted to ask that some of the feedback I've certainly had from residents, not necessarily applicants who are, of course, the primary customer where you look at their customer experience, but members of the community perhaps interested in a neighbour's application or in something that may or may be happening in their town in the future. The feedback from them is sometimes that they struggle to find the right person and to actually get to speak with them, particularly if they're uncomfortable with accessing the online portal, and that we don't meet their expectation that there would be a planning office where you can go down and look at plans. So I just wanted to ask about that sort of aspect of the wider community customer service, whether the hubs have any role there and how that's being met.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Excellent question in terms of how we engage with customers. And when I talk about customers, I'm not just talking about the applicants who put their planning applications in. I am talking about the neighbour, the local resident, community council, anyone who engages in the planning service. We do count as a customer, so we do really try and think about the customer's journey. If your neighbouring party make a planning application, how do you then engage with that planning service? As members know, every planning application is online, so everything is completely transparent and open in terms of us putting the information on, providing it's not sensitive for any viability issues or ecological issues. All the information will go online for residents to see. All case officers' contact telephone numbers are all online, so you will be able to speak to a case officer. We have a duty officer 9 till 5 Monday to Friday, so anyone can phone up the planning service and speak to somebody and get the information they need. You have mentioned the hubs there, Councillor Birch, as well, and all the hubs have computers where people can access online. I appreciate I'm saying online quite a bit, and that is the service that, you know, generally digitising is the way forward with many services across the council, and planning is no different to that. I think if there is any residents that members speak to who want to speak to us on a one-to-one basis, face-to-face, then please just phone us up, and we can try and make those arrangements. And most officers, planning officers, are here on a Thursday. We try and all get together on a Thursday and come into the office. So if there is someone who wants to speak to someone face-to-face, then I would suggest pick up the phone, speak to the duty officer, and we can try and arrange that. We are trying to move with the times, however, in terms of trying to move online and trying to get, you know, digital virtual meetings, but we do try and be as open and approachable as possible. And I think that is sort of the way we're going with regards to our online servicing. But if there are people with specific needs, then please phone us up and we can try and make those arrangements for them on a one-to-one basis.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Councillor Howells.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the report there. And I know at the performance and overview, there were a lot of questions that you all helped to address there, so thank you for that. Just one question really from me in my Llanfairpwll and Usk ward. I know I welcome that, you know, the phosphate issues being addressed in Monmouth and Abergavenny. Is there any sort of a solution coming to Usk at all?
So with Usk, I'm working with Natural Resources Wales at the moment. There isn't going to be a phosphate stripping capability installed within Usk. However, the current permit is being reviewed, the environmental permit, to review whether there's any additional capacity within the existing permit. So at the moment, I'm waiting for that permit to be reviewed. The only one in Monmouthshire that's been reviewed at this stage is the Raglan. So we are waiting at the moment, Councillor Howells, for that permit review to come back to assess whether there's any capacity within the existing wastewater treatment system. But there isn't any plans that I'm aware of for any strategic phosphate stripping at the minute. The only places that is happening is Monmouth and Abergavenny, and that's partly due to the investment the Welsh Water will make in terms of the population that it will serve. Obviously, those populations are higher, so we'll have the biggest improvements in our river by hitting the biggest populations first, so Abergavenny and Monmouth. So Usk might be further on down the line, but at the moment, I think strategically it's probably right and appropriate that we hit those bigger population denser areas. So not at the moment is the ultimate answer. I am working with Natural Resources Wales and Dura Cymru Welsh Water on the existing permit review, and that permit review might enable some development to happen if there is capacity within that permit. So we'll have to keep working on that. But all I would say with that, Councillor Howells, is that I will update you as and when I know of any movement in relation to that.
Many thanks, Craig. You say a permit. I believe this doesn't currently have a permit. Is that right?
every single wastewater management in Monmouthshire will have a permit, an environmental permit, but it won't necessarily have a phosphate stripping permit. So at the moment, Raglan has phosphate stripping capability. Us doesn't, but it does have an environmental permit, which is being reviewed at the moment as to whether there's any capacity for any additional development. So as soon as I get that permit review back, I'll be able to outline as to whether there is any capacity within that. And that is the same for other settlements as well, members. So for Penpaflenny, Little Mill, there's a number of permit reviews which are high on my agenda in terms of trying to get an answer for, based on current planning applications within the system.
Okay, great. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Craig, and the team for your report and for the presentation. You mentioned about agreed timescales. You may or may not be aware, I'm a dual ward, Councillor Richard John. Geographically, it's the largest ward in the county. We've got over 3,000 constituents, so we probably get more applications than what the average councillor would get. So we do get a lot of queries regarding planning, especially around timescales. So you said that you agree an extension of time with some of the applicants. Just wondering sort of how long is the usual extension of time, and is this date corresponded to the applicant? Secondly, I just wondered if any of your data is broken down into rural and urban areas. Now, one would assume, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that some of the more complex cases are actually within the rural communities. You probably see less of your standard sort of porches or skylights addition to properties, which may be typical in the urban areas. So therefore, I would assume that these more complex cases would have longer sort of timeframes with determination. So if there is a disparity, I just wondered if there's scope then to focus resources towards where that may be. You also mentioned about that you work with people to get the outcome, and I 100% agree with that through my experience. I think it's a really sensible way of working. I think it's testament to your forward thinking as a team. And I think it's a really positive thing. I think the other really positive thing is that you've got that hotline to a dedicated duty planning officer who can be at hand. As we all know, planning can be a complex thing, and to your average Joe Bloggs on the street, it can be quite daunting. So I think it's really great to have that. And I have spoken to lots of other people within other local authorities who say it's literally impossible to get to speak to a planning officer. So I think it's great that we do have that within Monmouthshire, and hopefully that will continue. Another point, I just think, something for a later date, it might be quite nice for us as committee members to have more information about officers, the areas they work, and a little bit more understanding really about their sort of workloads, whether they work full or part-time, because when we get inquiries from our residents, it might just be helpful to have that knowledge so that we can feed anything back to our residents. And then just to finish, I just want to thank Craig, Amy, Andrew, Phil and all the team for your hard work and dedication. I totally understand that you have budget constraints that can limit what you do. But, personally, I always find that you're exemplary at replying to any queries that I may have, or any queries that come through any of my residents through me. So, and as the chair and others have said, thank you and keep up the good work.
Craig?
Oh, thank you, Councillor McKenna, and other members for your kind words. I really do appreciate it. I know the team really, really appreciate it as well. So thank you very much for that. Really, yeah, very nice to hear some nice feedback for the change. But yes, so just to go back on some of the questions there. So rural urban, no, we don't actually do that, Councillor McKenna, in terms of that split. Applications and the way the Welsh Government and we here in Monmouthshire look at applications on type of application, so householder, minor, major, they're the sort of standard split, and that's how they're split on a fee schedule basis. So we don't try and split them into that aspect. The planning officers work on an area basis, so they have certain areas, so they get to know the areas, know the roads, know the communities, know the sort of town clerks and that sort of thing, so they get those sort of relationships. So we do try and do it on an area-based scenario. I would suggest that in terms of controversial applications, it all depends on the development type and where it is. If it's rural, it might be in the middle, it might not have any neighbouring properties, so therefore there might not be any concerns with development proposals, or it might be in an urban area where there's a number of residents who want to make comment on an application. So I think sometimes it's difficult to say which application is going to be controversial or not, and which application is going to need more resource or not, until the consultation is done and you get all the comments back, and then as officers we need to make a decision based on those comments that we receive ultimately. So it's hard to split it in that urban-rural context. They're both governed by different planning policies as well. Obviously, rural areas are much more restrictive in terms of what you can do. So sometimes that reduces in a smaller amount of planning applications generally, because people know they can apply for certain things. So I still think that's the right way to manage our resources on an area basis. We can try and look at some of that data if you would like, and see and try and pull that out. But the way it's normally done on an all Wales basis is based on application type, and particularly with regards to householder development. That's the sort of your bread and butter ultimately in terms of how planning services are funded. I might actually go down another route then if I start talking about funding, but just so members are aware, the planning service is quite significantly subsidised by those major applications. So the major applications got quite a high planning fee, which subsidises some of the other work that the planning service does, but I won't go into too much detail in terms of that. Great news in terms of the feedback on the duty officer is something that we do find challenging. It is hard to provide in terms of our capacity. It's something that as a management team we are pushing forward to continue. But resources and budget is something that we are going to be tackling with over the next couple of years. So great to hear that feedback. The members think it's useful. It is something that I am looking at, unfortunately, if we're able to provide it moving forward. But we will take that feedback away, and it's something that I know is valued by residents who are able to just pick up a phone and speak to us. So we'll hopefully be able to continue that. But I just wanted to flag that. And I know members are aware of this, we are looking at resources and budget at the moment, so we'll have to manage that as we go. It might be that we have a reduced service, but as I said, we will see how that goes out, and we'll feed back to members. In terms of extensions of times and agreed timescales, you mentioned, Councillor McKenna, we speak to every single customer to agree that timescale, so we write out to them, they have it in writing with the rationale and the reasons why we think we need an extension. A lot of the time is to the applicant's benefit. So for instance, I'll give you an example. We've gone out on site and we've looked at the building. We think there's a high chance that there's going to be bats in the roof or something like that. So we have to ask for an ecology survey. We have two options. We can extend the period of time to determine the application with the customer, or ultimately we could refuse the application, which isn't beneficial to anyone. So highly likely that the customer would agree to that. So we'd write to them, they'd have that in writing, and we would move forward on that basis, working with them, as we've suggested already, for that positive outcome, to give them the opportunity to submit a BAT survey. So that's just an example there of how we try and work with people rather than issue a refusal. So yes, that is all done in writing, so customers have that up front. In terms of meeting planning officers, I think that's a great idea. If planning committee members wanted us to do that and arrange that in the future, we could have some sort of coffee morning or something, quite an informal, scenario. We could have something like with the planning officers. I'm sure they'd be happy to do something like that, and to meet members and just have those one-on-one conversations. I'm sure that's something that we could arrange in the new year. If members wanted to do that, more than happy to.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Craig and the team. I think we've had such glowing reports this afternoon, I can't add anything to it, really. And actually, when I put my hand up, I was going to ask about Penpeleni, so you answered that, Craig, when you answered Councillor Howell's question. But I've got just a small question there on permits, though. I understand there's a small treatment works in Llanover. Is that part of the review? Great, okay. Because I believe that one discharges into the Usk.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Could be interesting to know, hear about some more about that when it comes along. Okay, another question I've got actually is about listed buildings. How do buildings become listed, and do we get, as buildings age, do they get added to the list? And that's one for Amy, isn't it?
I'm definitely going to pass to our expert for that one.
Thank you.
So CADU are the governing body that decide whether a building meets the criteria to be added to the list or not. That's not a decision that we take in-house. We just deal with the consequences of the building being added to the list. There is specific criteria, and it starts on age. So anything kind of pre-1840 and anything like its original condition would probably make it onto the list. Buildings post that date would have to be judged on their rarity and their retention of historic fabric, so how special are they. But CADU are starting to look at more modern structures now, so 20th century architecture does make it onto the list where it's a particularly good example of that type, or uses particular materials or has a particular architect, a notable architect behind it. So it has got to be quite special. To just put it in context, if anybody knows about the nylon spinners factory at Mamilid, the towers, the whole building is listed, but primarily because of the towers. So that type of building now, that's actually a grade 2-star building, and that's on the list. So they are widening their horizons, I would say.
Thank you very much.
I almost did. I chose a different job, but I was offered one in there many moons ago. Yeah. While we're thanking everybody, can I just record our thanks to Adam Foote? He's secured a good promotion and is moving to another authority, and it's his last day today. So, if you're watching, Adam, good luck, and thanks very much for everything you've done for us.
Good luck, Adam.
Right, the next thing is probably the most important part of the afternoon, the Christmas lunch. Yeah, so we'll just move on to that after I wind up the meeting. So that completes the proceedings for today. So Richard, can you turn off the recording, please?